Hey guys, it's Terry from Waving My Wand, and I recently shared this card on my social media. It's a no-line water Copic colored card, and I had some folks that wanted me to make a tutorial, so I'm happy to oblige. And so basically what I'm going to share with you today is how I did my no-line coloring, and also how I did this sky blended ink blending using my Catherine Pooler inks. And also I want to share with you the stamps that I'm using and the dimensions of this card. As an avid card maker and one who's been working in the craft and hobby industry for a while and been on many design teams, I have a habit of eyeballing my dimensions and just cutting for what suits me, and I go from there. So I don't often measure things, but what I do start out with is my card panel. And so what I've done is I've trimmed a card panel that I'm going to do my coloring on, and this is approximately 3.5 by 5 3/4. And I recommend heavyweight, at least, you know, if you can get your hands on 110-pound Nina Solar White heavyweight cardstock, that's what I recommend for Copic coloring. And I also have the base of my card. I've already trimmed and scored it, and it's approximately, well, let's do a quick little measure here. I believe it's around 7 inches. It's almost 7 inches by 5 3/4. And I do tend to make my cards, when I score them, a little shorter on the back side, just because they seem to stand a little better. So I went ahead and scored, once I trimmed this card, I scored it on the 3.5 inch line. So there you go. That's your dimensions for your card and your card panel that I've already done just to save time on this. And the stamps I'm going to be using today are from Inkblot Shop. You can find these at inkblotshop.com. I purchased mine from Simon Says Stamp, and I'll also have some product links in the video description. But this is called the Botanical Borders stamp set, and it's got several different borders that you can color, and they're super neat. Several sentiments, and so they're great for numerous occasions. We've got hello, love you, thank you, and for you. So if you want to give somebody a card, you can put just for you on there. And, you know, these are just beautiful, beautiful designs that Tiffany DeGuff has hand designed these herself. Inkblot Shop is her company. So what I did was, first I went ahead and inked up my stamp with my Misty Stamp Positioner. And you really want to use a stamp positioner if you don't have one. It makes it a little more difficult to stamp. So what we're going to do is go ahead and lay our card panel down. And I put washi tape on my, oh, my lighting went whack over there for a minute. Okay, there we go. I put a washi tape on my bar magnets just because it helps me to pick it up a little easier. And just that's a little tip there. So I'm going to go ahead and lay down my, I think I'll stamp first. Yeah, I'll stamp and then I'll ink blend after that, because I want a general idea of where my stamping is going to be. Let's put this right here. And so here we go. And then I'm put it right to the edge. There's a tiny little line here that will stamp as well. And it's almost great for a little grassy area that you can kind of color in later. So once you put your stamp down, if you've never used a stamp positioner before, this Misty comes with a foam pad that is good for your clear stamps. And if you're using thicker rubber stamps, then you just take the foam pad out. So we put this down, make sure the stamp clings really well. And you're going to need a light colored ink to do no line coloring. There's a lot of different inks out there, and I don't have any of the fancy inks that are designed specifically for no line coloring. Sorry, I had to pause for a minute because my ink disappeared. This is some light colored ink. It really stamps a little darker than the color that's on here. This is Catherine Pooler's Sandcastle ink. And a neat little trick that you want to do before you stamp onto your cardstock, and I'm just got stuff, look at that, sliding everywhere. Let me get this out of the way. Look how professional we are. These are all the Copic markers that I used for coloring. They're trying to roll into the screenshot here, but I'll share those numbers for you in on my blog and in my video description. So, proceeding and moving right along. All right, before I stamp my image onto my card panel, what I want to do is blot it onto some thin paper. And this is a little paper pad that comes with the Misty stamp positioner. Let's put this here. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp my image with my Sandcastle and just lightly ink it up. It doesn't take much with the stamp positioner. I don't want it to be too dark, but this is pretty much the lightest color that I have. But I want to sort of blot it first onto this paper, and so it sort of takes off some of the color. So I'm just going to gently press it, take off some of that color, as you can see how dark it is. And then I'm going to ink my panel. Press it really good all the way around. And there you go. So you have a light, faint image. It might be a little darker in places than I would like. So one of these days I really need to invest in some fancy ink design just for no line coloring. But there's your stamped image, and we'll color that in just a bit. But first, let's go ahead and move on to the ink blending. I used my Catherine Pooler Daydream ink, and Picket Fence Studios makes some really neat blender brushes that I'm going to be using today. I don't want to blend directly onto the paper just yet, so I'm going to blot my ink a little bit before I blend onto my paper. So just grab some scrap paper that you can blend, maybe some lightweight cardstock, and first what you want to do is go ahead and grab your ink and just use the head of your brush to maneuver and rub in a circle and get the ink on there, okay? And then go ahead and blot off some of that so that when it comes onto here, it won't be so heavy. And that's how you're going to get the lighter color. So I just basically started right about here and just very lightly blended the color in. And you can see how it really gives you a light touch. I love that. I've had problems in the past with blending my inks, and they just look, I just don't have the knack for it, but I love these blender brushes. They say that they're life-changing, and I would pretty much agree with that. They are life-changing. If you've had trouble with ink blending in the past because it looks streaky, or you know, it just doesn't look like it blends very well, then this, my friend, is the answer. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab just a little bit more color, and again I'm going to go in a circular motion on the ink pad to pick up the color, and I'm going to go ahead and blot it again and add some more, just lightly blending. I'm not putting too much pressure on this brush because I want my color to you know, to not be streaky. We're almost done. You can go a little darker if you wish. I didn't go too dark with this, but you know, whatever your preference is, you can keep blending until you get the shade that you want. You can mix in other colors, but I prefer to just stay with this one color of ink on this project. Alright, I think we're good. Might go up a little tad higher and just blend out just a little bit more. Alright, so now we're going to move on to our coloring, our Copic coloring. And let's see, I started with the pink, and I don't have a great mix of colors that all blend together because I've just been building my Copic color collection. So for my pink, I went with R32, R20, and RV10. And what I did was start with the lightest first, and then work my way with the other colors. And I also used what's called a flicking technique, where you just lightly flick the color in. But for the first coating, I'm not going to do the flicking technique. I'm just going to go ahead and flat out color it. But first, let me cover up my ink so I don't get stuff everywhere. And let's have our cards sitting here as a reference. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Starting with the pink. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and color all of the flowers that I had designated as pink. So I'm going to move on over here. Just do it all at one time. And everybody has their own style for coloring. And what I could do is speed this up so you don't have to sit here and listen to me, but because people specifically wanted a tutorial, then I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you. And like I said, I'm not super skilled with Copic coloring. I've just been doing it for, you know, a few months maybe. And I've just been watching videos. I follow several different groups on Facebook. I love Jen Shirkus. She has a Facebook group called Creative Chick Studio Share, something like that. And next I'm going to go in with the darkest color, and I'm just going to kind of lay a little base at the bottom of my flowers. And I'm going to flick it in. So just a little bit of color I'm going to flick in at the bottom of each flower. But Jen Shirkus, she's, oh, flitter, look at there, I just colored onto one of my purple flowers. Oh well, that's okay. We'll figure something out. I wasn't paying attention, I was talking. But, you know, there's all kinds of colorists out there that you can learn from. I'm not super skilled at it, so I'm not sure how much you're going to learn from me, but another one that I really love to watch color and follow, there's so many out there. Kathy Rakusin, she is amazing. She has a challenge on Instagram a couple times a year called the Daily Marker Challenge. It's a coloring challenge. And so follow the Daily Marker on Instagram. Next I'm going to go in with this lighter color, R20, and I'm going to pull that color from the bottom and flick it up. Just flick it up from the bottom. So we're trying to blend our colors together. All right. I'm trying. There I go. Working on the. We're gonna have an oddball flower right there where the purple should go. I also like Jennifer McGuire. These are some big names that you probably already know. She's super talented. Christina Werner. My friend Rhea Wiggins, she has a group called Passionate Paper Crafters on Facebook, and she's super skilled with Copics. She does a lot of coloring with digital images, and she's just amazing. So you should check her group out, Passionate Paper Crafters, or Passionate Paper Creations on Facebook. All right, so now we're going to go in again with the lightest color and flick it from where I left off on the last color. And these are very small blooms, so, you know, if I had a larger space, I'd have a little bit more room for getting super creative with these blooms. but like I said, it's a little tight space here. So you have to really be careful when you're doing Copic coloring. And from what I understand, what I've learned so far about it, is you just keep going back in and blending again and again. So I might go in and add a little more darker color again and blend some of that out as well. That's what I did the first time around. So why stray from what we've done? Let's do it again. Flick in some more dark color. And just keep on doing that. It's a little time consuming, but it's worth it in the end when your project is finished and you see how pretty it is. But if you're a patient person, you should not have any trouble. And so this is basically how we do this throughout the entire process. And I don't want to bore you and finish this complete thing all at one time, but I will show you a couple other steps that I did for my, well, I'll tell you what I could do is go ahead and speed up the process from here on out so you don't have to sit here and listen to me babble. So how about we do that, and then I can show you my embellishments. All right? Next up, when I was ready to do the petals, I went in with YG25 first, and I've also got that's what I did, and then YG17. So I did all of the petals, just putting that color in right there, real simple all the way through. And after I got finished with that, I went in and just put like a little dot of the darker color right on the inside of the petal. Just a little dot, because these are such tiny images. You really, got to try to create with the space that you're given, and try not to mess it up. Of course, if you mess it up, you can always start over. We're talking about stamps and paper, people, so there are no mistakes, only happy accidents, that's what they say. So I'm almost done with these little leaf petals, and on my other project I went in with some gel pens and drew in the stalks, but I don't think I'm going to do that on this one. I think I'm just going to try to lightly use my Copic marker here to draw the stalks and just see what happens. So I'm just going to be very gentle with the touch, because this is a very thin thin stamped image, and I don't want to make it too heavy because it'll detract from the flower. Alright, so far so good. I think I might end up liking this a little better than I did the first one. Who knows? Alright, still trying to keep a somewhat light touch by barely putting the tip on the paper. And if you go too fast, you might find yourself getting a little heavy-handed, so take your time and don't rush it. Alright, almost done. Alright, now, before I do my embellishing, I want to show you a little trick that I did. And I'm going to use this paper to put right up under the edge of my panel. And what I did was simply to, let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit so you can see a little better. I used the edge of my, I see a little one that I missed right here. I used the edge of my Copic marker to just tap grass onto the paper. So just go on down the line and tap in some grass. And if you place any of that green onto the any of the flowers, that's okay. Some of those flowers are low-lying, and you would naturally have flower blooms that were low to the ground hidden by grass anyway, so don't worry about that. And also I'm going to go in after this and tap in a little bit of the darker green as well. You can go as high or as low as you wish. You might even want to go higher in some places and lower. I'm going to vary that this time. I didn't do that so much the last time, but I'm going to go ahead and vary that so that I've got some higher grass in places than I do in others. Alright, now I'm going to go in with a darker green. And again, this is YG17. And I'm going to tap in some of this color as well. I don't want to completely blot out the color that I've already placed, so I'm going to kind of be just a little more random with this color and not just completely cover up. And this is almost just right on the very edge there. And there you go. Now for my embellishments. My Signo white gel pen. I love this thing. It's my favorite. If you ever have trouble with a white gel pen, this is the one to use. It easily flows. If it does ever get stopped up, because sometimes color, while you're coloring, it can stop the ink from flowing. Some of the color gets onto the tip. Just rub it across your finger and that'll help to get it flowing again. So what I did on my flowers, and especially since I don't have a fancy no line coloring ink, and there's a little bit of lineage outline here, I sort of want to cover that up. So what I'm going to do is tap in with my white gel pen, and I embellish my greenery and my flowers a lot with a white gel pen anyway. I just think it adds a little bit of extra light effect, and it just makes it look extra special, like you took your time and to make your card extra special. So just tap that color in. Little tiny white dots is all we're doing, and we're going to do this over all the flowers, just at the top of edge of the flowers, so it looks like they've got a little bit of light hitting it, or a little dew or something like that on there. Now you don't have to do this. This is just something that I personally like to do whenever I embellish flowers and leaves. It's kind of like a little trick that I do fairly often, and I think it just really makes your flowers pop, and it's unusual. So it's almost, you know, maybe like a little trademark thing that I do. So I'm just passing along trade secrets here. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to pause while I finish this and be right back. Alright, so we're done with that now. And I promised you that I was going to go in and add a little bit of the dark green to my my leaves. So right on the inside there, I'm just placing a little dot. And basically what it's just doing is giving it a little bit of layering, you know, I guess for lack of a better word. A little bit of layering, a little bit of dimension, and, you know, it just draws your eye to that area. And so that's all that is. I'm also going to embellish my stalks and my leaves with some of the white gel pen. So again, let me remind you, I'll have product links in my video description. I am an affiliate for some of these companies. I only work with companies that I absolutely love the products that they sell, and I buy them for myself. And if you purchase anything through any of my affiliate links, I do get a small commission, maybe 23 cents, maybe more. So it's just something that helps me have giveaways and various things that I do on my social media to kind of give back as well. Alright, let's get this flowing a little better. I'm going to just dot all the way down my stalks. And this is another thing that just adds little bits of detail and just a special little touch. Rather than just leaving it alone like we did, it just adds another level of interest to your card. And so I am just going all the way down, tapping in little little dots with my white gel pen. And we're just about done. Just to save time, I'm going to quickly dot onto my leaves as well. Well, I was just going to pause the video, but let's just keep going. Just a little dot here and there. And we are about to finish this. Alright, next up is the sentiment. And I'm always needing thank you cards. So, I mean, I can't have too many, really. So that, as well as sympathy cards. I do a lot of sympathy cards because my husband and I are both involved in church ministry, and I play the piano. I'm a trained musician and singer, and he's also trained, graduated with a music degree, and plays guitar by ear. He's amazing. He can also play the piano, pretty much self-taught. We have a 17-year-old teenager who's super skilled with the saxophone, and he plays in the high school marching band. And so we're a very musical family. And being in church ministry, I have the need frequently to send cards for various reasons, particularly sympathy cards. By the way, speaking of, no, forget it. Okay, now let's pull out, do we want to go ahead and do another thank you card? I think we do, because I can't have too many, like I said. Oops, sorry, I think I'm out of the shot. There we go. Let's tap on there and get out the blur. Alright, so now I'm going to do the sentiment, and I just placed it right above my cloud line there. And make sure it's lined up really well. And then I'm going to tap in my ink. And for this, I'm about out of my Catherine Pooler black ink. I've got to get some more. I've got to get a re-inker. So I'm going for my Gina K amalgam ink. I just have bought this. I thought I'd give it a try. I heard a lot of good things about it. And supposedly amalgam ink is an ink that you can use to stamp your images with and get, you can watercolor with it, or you can use Copic coloring with it. Either way. And I believe the Catherine Pooler inks are the same. The great thing about using a stamp positioner when you're doing this is, opposed to an acrylic block, sometimes you don't get a real good ink. Like right there, there's a little spot that didn't ink up really well. So the stamp positioner just allows you to continue inking in the same spot over and over. You just re-ink the stamp. It hasn't moved. Your paper hasn't moved. And so you can keep doing that over and over until you get enough ink on there the way you want it. And usually 2 or 3 times is enough. If you've got a really good ink, then twice will be plenty. So there we have our card panel. We're almost done. And now we want to adhere our card panel to the card. And I'm a super big fan of scrapbook adhesives by 3L. And I don't have my white ink or my white crafty tape handy, so I'm going to grab my black. I use it often for black card when I'm working with black cardstock, but it's good for this too. And I tend to be very heavy-handed when I'm adding tape. As a professional card maker, you want your project to stick. You don't want it to come apart. And so, you know, if you're going to have your work showing up at trade shows, everything needs to be nice and tidy and neat. So I'm just in the habit of being heavy-handed with my tape. You can also use foam circles or foam squares, whatever works for you. But I usually start on the end and work my way in, just so everything is centered properly. I'm a little OCD that way. Don't tell my husband, because I accuse him of being OCD all the time, because he is. But I'm not. Just about a few things. All right, so there we go. And so we've got our tape. You want to be careful when you're laying your card panel down that you don't stick it to your card base until you're absolutely sure it's exactly where you want it. So I usually try to grab it and keep the sticky side away and just pretty much eyeball it. And see, I already don't want it to go down yet, so I have to pull it up before it sticks. Oh Lord, I hear my teenager screaming. He's playing video games with his friends. And so there we go. That's it. A beautiful thank you card. And now I have a companion. And I hope you like these products. I hope you'll check out the video description and maybe do a little shopping. And I hope I haven't bored you to tears. I am somewhat of a talker, and I apologize for that. But I know there are some of my followers who are visually impaired, and so if I were to type instructions onto the screen, or you know, just have everything on the screen for you to read, that does not help our visually impaired fans. So I do a lot of talking. I don't prefer to do voiceovers. And anyway, enough babbling from me. Thank you so much for popping in today. I hope you'll follow me on social media at Waving My Wand, on Pinterest, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. You'll find me everywhere. And check out my Crafty Friday Night series that's on YouTube as well. I have 1-minute craft hacks and tips and tricks that I share, not every Friday night, but every so often. Thank you. Thanks for popping in. See you next time.